Hello and welcome back to Helluva Podcast. I'm Alex.
I'm O, and the audio is still silent.
And today we are going to be talking about... What are we talking about? We're
Oops.
talking about Oops! Oh my god. The episode.
I think we've said that about like 4 different episodes at this point.
Yeah, but this one, I feel like, especially the last few episodes, every time we talk about Blitz, we're always like, yeah, and Fizz, which we'll talk about in Oops.
Yeah.
Because, like, this is one of those episodes that when we watched it, we had to, like, pause and, like, process. I think the most out of any episode.
Yeah. And it's one of very few, weirdly enough, that we've watched together when it first came out. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of them, for whatever reason, whether, like, it was summer break or something, we just weren't physically together to watch it.
But, well, no, it was because until after X's and O's, you had already watched the show.
Yes,
what it was mainly.
But then Western Energy, you were at home.
That's true.
Unhappy Campers was during the summer.
That's true. So was this the first one?
I think this was the first one we watched when it first debuted.
Because this also, I don't remember if it was advertised a lot. I feel like each episode gets advertised less and less when it's going to drop nowadays. But we hadn't checked like Twitter or anything for so long.
Yeah.
And so we were... I don't know if we were doing podcast business or we just hanging out, doing like a study session. I don't remember exactly what was happening, but you look at your phone and you go, hello.
Yeah.
And it was the new episode. And so we immediately just like, we weren't even planning on watching Helluva. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. That's just some background of our context of watching this episode. But for context for everyone in the world currently, the most recent episode of Helluva Boss that's released is Season 2, Episode 9, Apology Tour, and the most recent Helluva short is the second one, Antarctica. So if anything happens that completely disproves our theories, that's what we're pulling from.
Yeah. Also, this episode will most definitely be a part 1 of 2, maybe more than that. Hopefully not. I like to limit our things to no more than 2 parts, but you know.
The circus should be our only 3-parter.
Yeah.
And what was the other 3-parter? Was it Truth Seekers?
Yes.
Which was crazy, because Truth Seekers, like, looking back on it, not that big of an episode. I think we were just less organized then.
Yeah, well, the bad trip sequence on its own was most of it.
Well, that was one episode.
Yeah.
One episode was bad trip, but everything else should have fit in one other episode.
Yeah.
But yeah. And the next episode that's going to come out is Ghostfuckers. That's releasing in October, which before that was like a while ago, but now that's soon. That's soon because September is when this will be released, 1st of September. But for us, because we're pre-recording, because we're moving into college, whoop whoop, on the 1st. But it's like, you know, it's not even September yet, but it's soon.
It's so soon.
And then October, and like it could be October 1st. It's probably going to be near Halloween, but like we don't know.
It's probably... I would even be willing to bet it'll come out on Halloween.
Yeah. I just don't want it to. I want it to come out on the 1st of October. I almost said the 1st of Halloween.
The 1st of Halloween. Yeah. And thanks to Alex, all of our episodes currently are now up on YouTube.
Yes, so you might be listening to this on YouTube, you might be listening to this on Spotify or any of the other podcast places. But yeah, I know we had a couple of people that kept being like, I want to listen, but I can't on Spotify. So they're on YouTube now. They should be accessible to everyone. They don't have age restriction, except they're not on kids' YouTube, obviously. Mm-hmm. So if you are restricted to kids' YouTube, you shouldn't be listening to our podcast anyway. But yeah, other than that, no restrictions on them. They're up there. If you know anyone who wants to listen to it but doesn't have Spotify or anything, it's on YouTube. And yeah, we're going to be uploading them bi-weekly on YouTube as well now, just like we do on Spotify. So, yeah. Yeah. There's 2 places for you to listen.
Hooray! Yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into, like, the opening of the episode. You know, before things go batshit insane.
Yeah. It opens really cutely.
It opens really cute, really, like, domestic life with Fizz and Ozzy. Fizz, like, curled up on Ozzy's chest as he sleeps, which is cute. Yeah.
And then the cock clock wakes them up, which is a rooster with a giant cock.
Yeah, a cock with a cock.
Cock with a cock. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Fizz's eyes are glowing under his blanket like he's a little kitty cat, which we call Blitz catcore all the time. And we even talked about Barbie being catcore in the last episode, so... Yeah,
so all the circus kids just catcore as hell, I guess. Yeah. Fizz's prosthetics, which I will not get into them too much in this episode. I will get into them next episode. But they're very interesting just as a whole, especially his arms, his legs too, but his arms, they reach so far. Like in this scene, they reach all the way to the kitchen. And then he tries to pour coffee, which he does successfully for a minute, and then spills everywhere. But he's aware that he spills everywhere, even though it's on the other side of the house, which is interesting. Yeah. And then he just takes the entire coffee kettle and drinks out of it, which is so real. Yeah. But yeah, it's... How do they reach that far? Yeah. Like, obviously it's hell, so, like, the technology is probably not really limited. Yeah. But I don't know. It was very interesting to me.
Do we know... Maybe we totally know this and I'm blanking, but do we know who made his prosthetics?
I don't know necessarily who made them, but I feel like it's implied that Ozzy had a hand in it somehow. Yeah. Especially because I think... And again, this is for next episode more, but at the end of Ozzy fixes them, like, very easily, which could just be that he knows how to take care of his prosthetics because they're, a couple. Yeah. And I don't know how long they've been living together domestically, but the other side of that is that he made them, or that he knows the models really well because they get made, I don't know, in his factory, but also, like, his factory definitely has the capacity to make something like that, I feel.
Yeah, but all we actually see his factory make is sex toys.
Yeah, exactly, so that's why I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a very, like, that's my guess, but that's the only thing I can think of, like, I don't know what else it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Next point, Fizz sleeps in his prosthetics.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not accurate.
Yeah.
To how...
Disabled people don't sleep in their prosthetics. Yeah. At least most of the time. I'm sure there's, like, a few disabled people that might. I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but generally, that's not what happens, and that's always what is shown in TV. Yeah. Like, there's very few times in TV where people take off their prosthetics to sleep, and so yeah, especially with, like, there is some good disability rep. Is it later? No, it's in Mammon's episode. Good disability rep, so it surprised me. I was like, oh, both prosthetics too, like both sets of them. Yeah. But not his horns coverings. Which I don't think his horn coverings do anything. I know there's a theory that there's, like, hearing device of sort in them. A theory, my theory. But and, like, that would make sense if it's, like, taking off hearing aids, but that's not blatantly said. Yeah. And also, like, so it is more of an aesthetic, like, what's it called? Not tool, but item, I guess. So it was, I don't know, it was interesting that they took the care to, like, have Fizz have different horn coverings for different outfits and, like, times of day and things, but then not have him take his prosthetics off to sleep. Yeah. Yeah. Does seem to be very comfortable with Ozzy, though, is, like, if the horn coverings are a purely aesthetic, / comfort choice for him, then... he's comfortable enough around Ozzy that he doesn't feel the need to have them on with him. So that's... Yeah, at least not all the time. He does wake... See, that gets tricky, though, because he does wake up, and before Ozzy even wakes up, he immediately puts them on.
That's true.
But also, it's presumed, like... I assumed that, like, Ozzy was awake when Fizz took them off to go to bed. But I guess that isn't inherently true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he also... he wakes... Ozzy up with an air horn every morning. Yeah.
Maybe not every single morning, but Ozzy wakes up and says, again with the horn.
Yeah, and if this is meant to be, like, a typical morning for them, it implies to me that this isn't a daily occurrence.
And then when Fizz goes to read Ozzy's agenda, he puts on 3D movie glasses. So it's not like he's putting on reading glasses to read. And arguably, I think that would make it harder to read, no? That was just a little detail I liked.
Yeah. Yeah, also, Fizz being Ozzy's, like, little assistant, is, like, in this scene is interesting. That's not stated as his, like, official role or anything. That's just kind of the part he's playing here, like, reading his agenda out to him and everything. But, just given with the class divide issues and subject matter that is, like, shown through Blitz and Stolas all the time. It's a very interesting decision when, the relationship between Fizz and Ozzy supposedly is a lot different, and, like, they have something good going. like, that's what seems to be the case. But then there's also this instance where...
I think also the whole thing is that it's supposed to be, like, Ozzy treats imps and lower classes with respect and Stolas doesn't. Like, that's the... later in this episode when they're in the cage, that's the whole foil.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting. And I think it could be a few things. I know that I wrote this note, but I'm vamping a little bit on it. I think that, like, Fizz being... Like, is he being treated as an assistant? Has he just stepped into that role? And is it because, like, of societal pressure? Because that's what he, like, he has stated, I don't know if it's in this episode or in the next, in Mammon, that he, like, you know, feels lesser than, feels like he has to, like, be something to be with Ozzy because he is a lower class. Is it just because Fizz is, like, just needs to feel important and feel like he's working all the time? Like, it, I feel like there's a lot of things that could go into it, but I think specifically with Stolas and the way that Blitz and Stolas interact, and then them being Ozzy and Fizz being foils, like, it is interesting to have him be his assistant.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know if their dynamic has changed at all after the Mammon special. Because that's when Fizz kind of has his big, like, you know, revelation of not needing to, like, I mean, obviously the whole not needing to be perfect thing, but then also, like, he just rejects this life of work, basically. So, I don't know. I'd be interested if that shifts anything in their dynamic, too.
Yeah. I think it is really interesting, because the only bit we've seen of Fizz since Mammon is when he's in the factory.
Yeah, in Full Moon.
Yeah. And that could just be, like, he went in there to get something for Blitz specifically, but he's very spokesperson-y, so I feel like he went into that role, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he's the spokesperson, he's, like, a salesman for the company in the factory, which is interesting, and we'll get to that in that episode, but, yeah.
Moving on, Fizz canonically cannot cook.
Yeah. Should I burn the milk this time?
Yeah. And then also what has now become a staple of our vocabulary, especially when it's burger day at college, is burger time. Burger time. Burger time. Yeah.
It's too early for burgers. Me when burgers start at 11:30 a.m. at college.
Literally. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Any other notes on burger time?
Great line. I love it. I think it really shows their dynamic too. It shows, because I think Fizz is supposed to be this little, like, you know, chaotic, not even chaotic, neutral, like, chaotic little gremlin energy, you know? And then Ozzy is like this, that's my little gremlin energy. And I think it's shown really well in this scene.
Yeah.
I also think that Fizz would love a sunrise burger, the one with the fried eggs on them. That's a breakfast burger.
Yeah. Fizz goes to great lengths to hide the newspaper article from Ozzy, the one about him and Ozzy's relationship. He, like, crumbles the newspaper, throws it away, and then throws the entire trash can out of the window.
Yeah.
And I do... I don't know if this is something we should get more into now or later in this episode or in the Mammon special, but I have a lot of thoughts on, like, Fizz and Ozzy and, like, the sort of less good parts about their relationship that I'm curious if they'll be expanded on. And, like, obviously, you know, this is kind of resolved in the Mammon special, this whole thing of Ozzy wanting them to be a secret. Like, they fully, like, go public with their relationship in at the end of Mammon.
But it's at the end. We don't actually see how the public outcome happens from that.
Right. But, I mean, like, as far as interpersonal issues between just the two of them, like, any feelings Fizz was having about being a secret, I would assume, are mostly gone with Ozzy, like, making the decision to be like, I love him, like, publicly. But, I don't know, kind of going back to the, like, Fizz chaos gremlin and Ozzy, like, this is my chaos gremlin. It, like, it's cute, but it also, it rubs me the wrong way a little bit.
Yeah.
With the whole, even, like, I don't know, the, like, just the massive size difference between them almost feels like a very intentional choice in terms of, like, you know, power dynamics, which obviously there's an inherent power dynamic with Ozzy being the sin of lust, but I don't know. It feels a little weird to me, and I'm not sure if that's the intention of the show and that's something that they're going to go further into and commentate on, or if that's just like a part of the show incidentally and it's not going to be touched on. So I don't know.
Famous last words of this podcast or any analyzing of Helluva bosses, they have a really good opportunity to do something really cool here.
Yes, exactly.
They do. Like, if they went into that would be really interesting. And I think they could, especially, like, even at this point, there's nothing... like, sometimes we're like, yeah, they could go into this, but I understand why they might not because of this reason. I don't think there's anything stopping them at this point in the series from going into something like that.
Yeah.
And I also think back to our original impressions of Fizz and Ozzy in Ozzy's when we didn't like them at first.
No.
Like, especially Ozzy. And the fact that, like, we read them so much different now that we've seen a little bit of them. Like, I like their relationship, but it still does make me a little uneasy.
Yeah.
I don't like... Something about the fact that they're supposed to be the good relationship sits wrong with me, kind of similar to Millie and Moxie, where they're supposed to be, like, the good, happy, married couple, but, like, they're very clearly toxic.
Yeah.
At least in Unhappy Campers.
Yeah, I think it's worth, like... You can't disregard it as a whole, because it ultimately is a part of the show, and when it comes to, like, our analysis, we have to... like, just accept the fact that Unhappy Campers is there, but for my own personal feelings about Millie and Moxie, I tend to disregard that episode.
That's real.
But yeah, also, about the whole size difference thing, which makes me worry that it is just kind of an incidental fact of the show, is that it feels fetishizey. Not that we've really even seen Fizz and Ozzy in a sexual way at all, but I don't know, there's a lot of people have raised very valid critiques and concerns about the Vivzy Pop animation style.
Yeah.
One with, you know, a lot of the characters being very skinny. And then also, I saw something recently, I don't think it was directly about Helluva or Has-Been, but I saw it and I immediately thought, like, oh, this is a lot like Helluva and Has-Been, and it was like, male character designs versus female character designs, and the male ones were like super varied and like very intricate, and then all of the women looked exactly the same, and I was like, that's ringing a bell for me.
Yep.
So that's sort of a tangent, but it just like the fetishizey, I can't say that word, sorry, but the fetishizey size difference between Ozzy and Fizz just seems very in line with other issues that are ingrained in the show's animation and such, and so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, the issues that we're pointing out with them aren't on purpose, you know?
Yeah. I think, like, that makes a lot of sense, but I think also, like, to foil Blitz and Stolas as well, there's not as much of a size difference, but, like, there is one, you know, like, and that's their whole thing, is, like, the big bird and the little imp. Even though... Isn't Blitz, like, supposed to be a bigger imp? Isn't that his whole thing?
I think he is pretty big for, like, compared to the other imps we've seen.
But not Fizz. I think he might be a little bigger than Fizz, but he's about the same size, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, but yeah, even Blitz and Stolas, though. Like, if you take Fizz and Ozzy out of the picture, and then you look at Fizz and Stolas, there's still... a difference, especially in I think Lululand is the first time we see them like walking side by side, and whenever I rewatch that I'm like, oh my god, he's that much smaller.
No, that's the thing.
It weirds me out.
And with Blitz and Stolas, we have a lot of reason to believe it is fetishized.
Yes,
because of everything about Stolas.
Yeah.
But we have seen them in a sexual context. We haven't seen Ozzy and Fizz in a sexual context, which is really interesting given Ozzy as the sin of lust.
Yeah.
I think that's done very well. That's not necessarily for this. That's for this episode. It's for later in this episode, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also just feel the need to note that a lot of you freaks, you fans, make it fetishizey between Fizz and Ozzy. Their size difference.
And at the very least, the show is a breeding ground for that to occur, even if it's not encouraging it itself.
Yeah. I think I don't like it in just like point blank. It's not great. But the way that some of the fandom takes it is so way too far.
Yeah. Fizz and Ozzy, again, have we seen them in any sexual context?
We've seen them flirt, and there's one little part in this episode.
Yes.
Or I guess there's two. There's one near the beginning, and there's one at the very end. But not like we've always seen them clothed. Not anything like Blitz and Stolz.
Yes.
Like we haven't seen them like get ready to fuck or anything.
Yeah.
So
I have one little thing and then we can move on. But I was back when Apology Tour came out. I was talking to another friend about the show who I won't name. But she said, quote, I have a lot of analysis thoughts of the way the show has veered into toxic yaoi. And I just feel like that surmises a lot of thoughts I have about the show as of late, and that's why,
I think also, I don't know what it is about me, but I don't, like, absorb the sexualness of the show, really. I'm always like, oh yes, analysis, and they're depressed, and oh my god, toxic dynamics and stuff. So like when people, I don't know, like it's not something I notice in the forefront, and I feel like the need to say that because it's not, on the forefront of my brain. But she's so right now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. By the way, I'm drinking a hot chocolate and it's so fucking good. So if at any point I just go, I just had the urge to do just now, that's why.
I'm drinking a cold chocolate milk.
Yeah, we both got chocolate. I got Milano cookies before we started and then realized I can't eat those while we're recording, so I'm just staring at them longingly.
We have an ASMR podcast where we're just eating Milano cookies. Do you want to sing them your Milano song?
Milano, 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 Milano. That's the whole song.
Yeah.
It keeps going. Milano.
But anyway, just one more note, like circling back a little bit to the newspaper thing. The fact that that Fizz fully throws it out the window, which, like, that's excessive. But, I don't know. It's the fact that he doesn't want Ozzy to see.
Yeah.
It's not that, like, he's upset about it being there. It's not that, like, it's very clearly just, like, oh my god, my partner or the person I'm with cannot see this. He will get mad. Kind of energy.
Yeah.
Not healthy.
No.
And I do think that is definitely cleared up quite a bit when they go public, but, like, how much is it cleared up? Especially with, like, Fizz's history and things. Right. Like, does he still feel the need to hide things? Does he feel the need to not be coupling in public? Like, what is their dynamic after? Yeah. Is what I want to know.
I'm really curious to see that. And to be fair, it could also be a matter of, like, not wanting Ozzy to be upset rather than mad. Yeah. But I just feel like from the few times we've seen Ozzy, even later in this episode, when he finds out that Fizz has been kidnapped, he, like, freaks the fuck out. So I just feel like anger is just kind of an emotion that is readily accessible to him. So, like,
I think even making him upset, like, it's that walking on eggshells kind of thing.
Yes, for sure.
Which is bad.
Yeah.
But also, you're right. That makes me wonder, like, how much, like, obviously that anger is when Fizz is literally being held hostage.
Yes.
So, like, it's a good scenario to have that kind of anger. But, like, has Fizz ever been in Ozzy's presence when he's had that kind of anger? Right. And, like, we have this size difference too, so seeing this person that's, like, what? How many times bigger than Fizz, do you think?
So, yeah.
Grow in size and get angry and, like, literally compartmentalize? Yeah.
Is that the word?
I don't know. Break into parts and, like, fume and stuff. That's terrifying. Yeah. So, like, if he was trying to avoid that, like, that's fair, but also that's not healthy.
Yeah. This is going into Mammon, so I'll be quick. But, I do think that, like, despite, because Ozzy, even if you don't see him, physically grow in size like that, he obviously is someone who has a lot of power just from who he is. And I do think it's worth noting that in the Mammon special, when, like, Mammon is, like, yelling at Fizz, like, Ozzy, like, comes right up behind Fizz and, like, gets all big and angry and stuff, and Fizz isn't, like, fazed by that. So I think there is, like, a level of trust there. It just, I don't know. It's, like, the show's trying to give the impression that they're, like, the healthy, good relationship, but there are very real and valid reasons why it wouldn't actually be like that. And so I'm curious to know how that will play out.
And I think also, like, what we have set up right now between Blitz and Stolas and Fizz and Ozzy, I think if they were to frame it as a healthy relationship and then pedal back, that would be not only, like, fine, but it would be really cool.
Yeah.
Because we have Blitz and Stolas being the very clearly unhealthy relationship, and then everything breaks, and then presumably things are going to get better. Blitz has learned to apologize now. Huge.
Huge.
He's gonna, like, work on himself. Continue talking to Stolas. He walked right into his garden.
Yeah.
So he doesn't give a shit. So I think that he will keep doing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, Stolas is gonna get some, and maybe they won't get back together, which would also be a powerful choice. But given the trajectory of the show, they probably will get back together.
Yeah.
And they'll hopefully be healthy.
Yeah.
And then if we did that, and then the foil relationship kind of fell apart, and we saw the inside of it, and it wasn't healthy, I think that'd be really cool, and it would also be really good message-wise, because it was like, oh, this one seems good on the outside, this one seems bad on the outside, they're the same. Or not the same, but, like, you know, they're both bad, and, like, so seems like the perfect relationship isn't gonna last is great. Like, you don't see that. That would be an actually really unique storyline.
I agree. They're just playing with very precarious dynamics here that are really cool if they get them right, but have the potential to be really bad if they get them
really
wrong.
bad. If they're like, yes, this is the perfect couple, and also they're emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
We can't really have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hard pivot.
Let's move on.
Hard pivot. I love when Fizz sticks his little tongue out.
Yeah. Ozzy twirls Fizz's tail, and it makes Fizz, like, his knees, like, literally shake.
Yeah, he, like, buckles.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's one of the few, there's two. That's the start of one of the sexual contexts we've seen. He does that. He, like, twists it and snaps it.
Yeah.
And Fizz, like, really blushes.
Yeah.
And then he picks him up, and, which, I have quarrels with this scene. Because, one, there's that, and it's cute, right? And he picks him up, and then they're, like, you know, kissing and messing around, and then the person walks in, and Fizz goes, we're trying to have an unemotional bang sesh here.
Yeah.
Because we're so not in love.
Yeah.
And it's funny. But there's one part where Fizz says, stop it, playfully. And then Ozzy is playfully like, no.
Yeah.
Which, like, is cute, but also I'm not a huge fan of the wording there.
I disagree, because I've seen a lot of things about, like, you know, not to go so into sexual, whatever, but I've seen a lot of things about, like, having, I don't know, I guess specifically having safe words for those situations, because, like, you know, people can be into that kind of thing, so I don't think it's inherently bad.
It's not like I didn't even put it in the notes. It's because it's not one of my huge things. And it's not like something that I was like, oh my god, ew, like I hated that. It's just a little thing that I noticed, especially with Ozzy's whole thing being like consent, yes, and lust shouldn't, you know. So it's like, but yeah, and I think it is entirely possible that, you know, in those situations they do have a safe word, but that's not necessarily clear.
No, I don't think it needs to be, though, because, like, we're being shown a relationship that has clearly been going on for some time, and they have, like, established boundaries and trust between them, so, like, I don't know. I don't think it's something where we need to be shown, like, yeah, by the way, they had this conversation, like, a few months ago, where, you know, if one of them says stop like this, they can keep going, but if one of them says this, then they should, you know, like, I think it's just implied.
I think also, like, there's the whole thing of, like, you know, language and like expression of language too. Like, obviously it was very playful, so that's another, like, it wasn't a huge, like, red flag for me. It's just something I noticed and wanted to bring up. But I think the main reason that I was kind of like I was like, yeah, that's probably nothing, is because of the way that they were saying it, but also I just, you know, writing is intentional, so the language used was interesting to me.
Also Fizzy Frog.
Oh yeah, he calls him Fizzy Frog,
which is very cute.
Yeah, and then he calls him Froggy later, which is clearly a play off of this, which is cute.
And I believe he has him in his phone contacts as Froggy or something like that. Yeah, moving on to Greed. The Greed section of the well, it's all mostly in Greed, but arriving in Greed.
Yes, when Fizz arrives in Greed is where we're at.
Yeah, someone chokes and dies on Fizz's big entrance confetti. And then...
Yeah, because he says he's gonna, like, not be noticed or whatever, and then shows up in a limo, confetti, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then, someone chokes and dies, and the Queevies, I think I'm saying that right, his little dogs.
Yeah.
Eat the body to its bones.
Yeah, just like the Underland Chronicles.
Okay, if anyone's a really big fan of us, I want you to go through every episode and do a count of every time that Audie says, this is just like the Underland Chronicles.
Have I said it a lot on this show?
I say it a lot all the time. I feel like you've definitely said it at least a few times on this show.
Okay.
I want a count to be done. Okay. So if we ever get any big fans that are crazy like that, I want you to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway... and then Fizz is just like doopa-doopa-doo.
Doopa-doopa-doo, yeah. One of his Queevies has a wheelchair, which is really cute.
Yeah.
That, like, Fizz gives that one, like, special attention and love. Maybe his favorite one. They have, like, this sort of disability solidarity going on, which is sweet.
And they've got a little sweet little bond. It's so cute.
Yeah.
And then this raises the question of why does Fizz have the Queevies with him generally? Because he's going to the pageant rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
So why are they there?
Yeah. Ozzy was very worried about him going by himself, so it could be a protection thing.
Maybe, I mean, they did eat that guy.
Yeah. Maybe he just wanted to take them on a walk. I don't know.
And I also wonder if the one in the wheelchair is his ESA. Just because he does, like... And then we get to this later, but where... when he's talking to Blitz, he, like, bends down and, like, immediately starts kind of, like, petting him. So I'm... Or her. Or them. I don't know the Queevies pronouns.
They got non-binary Queevies.
Yeah, well, I said her because it's got, like, pink... on the wheelchair, which is not a thing, but just you know how people get like girl dogs and they're like everything has to be pink so they know she's a girl. So that's like that's where my brain went. But this Queevy. So I really like the idea that this little, how little dogs, they call them little freaks, little ones that shake. That's the energy this Queevy gives, and I really like the idea that that's Fizz's ESA. Yeah,
he's got these scrunkly little rodents. Fizz is on his way to a rehearsal, which is, we find out next episode, it's for the pageant that happens next episode, Mamon's contest. Fizz has Heelys.
Yeah, he's got little Heelys that click in and out, so he's, the Queevies are running and he's just like do.
We've got really important notes, guys. And then he says it's great not being in the spotlight for once, which is funny because you were on Heelys being pulled by like a dozen Queevies
and you arrived in a limo with confetti
that killed a man. So he's drawing so much attention to himself, but it also raises the question of, has there been a single time in his life, maybe other than when he was recovering from the fire, that he hasn't been in the spotlight?
Yeah, I think no.
I think no.
I think this has been his whole life. I think also the it's great not being in the spotlight thing too could be taken as like it's great to not be put in the spotlight. Like he's putting himself in the spotlight and he's fine with that.
Yeah.
But like being like making yourself known and putting yourself and someone else putting you in the spotlight are two separate things.
Yes, definitely. And then let me explain something to you guys about how Alex and I reacted when this episode came out. We were like kind of predicting things right as they happened. If you remember, we were like, "Oh, it's Fizz. I wonder if Blitz," and then Blitz comes into frame. We grab each other in real life, and then we'll get to this in like a few minutes. But we were like, "Wow, what if like Crimson is here because they're in Greed," and then Crimson shows up, and then Striker's there. I don't know if we called that one.
Yeah, I think when we first got to Greed, I was like, "Oh, I wonder if Crimson's gonna do anything to." Fizz, but then when they start fighting on the ground and it pans up and I said, what if Crimson was in there? Yeah. and then it said, then he says his line. I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah, this was a great one for us to watch together for the first time. We were like in Alex's bed in
my
his
dorm
tiny
bed.
Little single dorm room.
My really tall loft bed.
Yeah. Just grabbing each other, pausing, freaking out.
Sorry, I needed to get the last sip of chocolate milk. So sorry for the slurp.
Yeah, to relive this episode for the first time would be incredible.
Yeah. And also, circling to Blitz and Greed.
Yeah.
Why the fuck is he there?
Why is Blitz
Surely
and Greed?
not for that shitty ass coffee that he didn't like.
Yeah.
He's such a Karen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, why? Was he getting coffee on the way to a hit? But why would he be in Greed for a hit? Was he going to talk to Crimson? Was he going to talk to some crime person? Like, what? Why was he there?
Yeah. No idea.
We have no hints or theories for that.
No idea whatsoever. There was probably no reason. But also, knowing the show, maybe, like, the finale of season 4, they'll be like, hey, remember when Blitz was in Greed that one time? Yeah, well, he did this, and now Moxie's dead.
Yeah, probably.
So, we just have to raise the point.
Yeah. It is something that is there, and we're like, But also, Blitz would just go to Greed for fun and to get a shitty coffee and scream about it.
Yeah, I am curious how often people, like, travel between the rings and stuff, because we see it a good deal in this show, but I don't know, because, like, he goes all the way to Sloth for the hospital.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know, we talked about, like, is that the only hospital in hell, but, like, those types of infrastructure questions make me wonder how, obviously the sinners can't travel, but, like, everyone else, is that, like, common to just pop over to another ring for a coffee, or is it, like, a whole ordeal, like, going to another state,
I think also, like, I could see a lot of popping between certain ones. Like, Wrath is seen as, like, the lower class one, and then Greed is seen as the crime-ridden, like, grimy one.
Yeah.
So, like, and then Pride is the city.
Yeah.
Like, it is definitely grimy and it's crime-ridden, but it's, like, I genuinely, I don't know if it's meant to mirror LA or New York, but something of that degree. So, like, him popping down to Greed, which is not quite, like, as low as Wrath, but, like, people aren't gonna, like, it's not, like, Royal Land or anything.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to get out of the city for a minute.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Maybe this coffee place is usually good, so he's just like,
Maybe.
oh, I'm gonna go to my favorite coffee place in Greed, and then
they burnt the coffee. He's fucking upset.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not Blitz's fault.
maybe we should lay the fuck off.
But then, Fizz runs into him with his dogs.
Yeah.
Quevies, whatever they are.
Yeah. Really emphasizes the O when he says, sure, Blitzo.
Yeah. And then Blitz says, the O is silent now, bitch. Which, like, did Fizz even know that? Like, they haven't talked.
Years.
Yeah. Like, he brought a lot of energy, but he wasn't like, you motherfucker, how dare you call me that? He was like, the O silent
bitch.
Motherfucker. Yeah.
Yeah. 15 years is probably longer than some of our listeners have been alive.
Yeah. Oh. God, if you weren't alive when the circus fire happened, hop off the pod.
Yeah. No, for real.
But yeah, and then when Blitz pokes Fizz, I don't know what he's yelling at him, but he's yelling something at him. And Fizz wipes it off.
Wipes off the spot where he poked him. Yeah. I love this next line we have written where Fizz, like, I think sort of jokingly accuses Blitz of being a stalker, and Blitz goes, we've been in each other's relative vicinity twice in the last 15 years. That would make me the shittiest stalker in history.
Yeah, it's just such a good line. He's so real, too, because Fizz is like, what are you, stalking me? And he's like, bitch, I haven't seen you in 15 years.
Like, Blitz is a hitman. If he wanted to stalk Fizz, he could.
He's like, I fucking could, and I would, but I'm not. I respect you.
Do you think Fizz even knows about IMP, though?
Oh, I doubt it.
I mean, they have ads and stuff. Like, there's a billboard.
But does he know that Fizz... I'm not Fizz. Blitz. I don't know why I keep messing him up.
Their names are so tricky.
Yeah. It's fucking Invader Zim all over again.
True. Zim and Dib and Gaz and there's a tack, too, in there somewhere. Yeah. I think Blitz's name is on the billboards. Or at least one of them. I don't know. Curious. Yeah. But the two times they have seen each other, like, This is the second time. The first time was Ozzy's.
Yeah, and they're close.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how much time has passed between those two things, but...
But also the fact that they saw each other not at all for presumably, 14 and a half years.
Yeah.
And then seeing each other twice is crazy.
Yeah. Wild. I just said Fitz. That's not even...
I don't even think that's their ship name, but it probably should be.
Yeah. Fizz, wiggles Blitz's necklace, the one he got from his mom, and says twice is already way too much, too many times to see each other, which is fucked up.
Yeah. And it was fucked up in the last episode when Barbie touched the necklace.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, good lead up on the but the thing there, having because that was last episode, right? Last episode have Barbie touch it. This episode in the beginning have Fizz wiggle it. That's what I was trying to say. He doesn't poke it. He grabs it and shakes it.
Yeah.
And then reveal it later in this episode. Good placing.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think, obviously we don't fully know the story of what happened with Barbie and Blitz, so maybe she's also, somewhat vindicated, and also, it's her mother, too.
Yeah.
So, but I do think, apart from that, if anyone has the right to give Blitz shit about the fire, it's Fizz.
Yeah.
Maybe not his mom dying, but,
because also Barbie, too, has significantly less scarring and stuff. The whole theory of, she probably wasn't there is really justified. Not that she was affected the least, because, her mom fucking died.
Yeah.
But, out of everyone of this trio, I think she was affected the least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, and Fizz was definitely affected the most.
Yeah.
Well, I guess his mom didn't die. But we don't know if he has a mom, so neither here nor there.
Yeah. Then Blitz says, at least I'm still working for my shit and not getting everything handed to me like some pampered attention whore. So I guess Fizz does know to some extent that Blitz is working somewhere.
Or at least Blitz assumes he does.
Yeah. But that very much strikes a nerve. They both strike a serious nerve in each other in this conversation, and it's really, visually shown, and I like it.
There's no one who can strike a nerve in you more than a childhood best friend that almost became your lover.
Yes.
Someone who knows your inner workings so deep and all of your biggest mistakes from adolescence will have no skin on anyone else in the real world and in the show.
This is just like The Pairing by Casey McQuiston, a book I am 60 pages into, but trust me, I'm
gonna just have to believe you.
Yeah. Yeah, but that strikes a nerve. They obviously both worked very hard as kids. Fizz still works very hard.
Yeah, and to his own detriment. Just like when they were kids, obviously.
Yeah.
But we learn more about that next episode, though.
Yeah. And Blitz probably thinks that Fizz has always had it easier because he was a better performer and was, presumably, from what we see, treated better when they were kids.
And he also probably assumes it came easier to him, even though that's not necessarily true. He might have just, worked until he fucking, couldn't, put all of his energy into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he probably also assumes with Ozzy and Mammon that that Fizz is getting handout.
Yes.
You have to do less work and you're famous, whereas Blitz is trying to start something from the ground up. But again, not necessarily equivalent at all. No. Not comparable.
Yeah, I hope these two, we get to see them sit down and just I would watch a 40-minute conversation. They're just sitting there talking about circus trauma and shit. They both gotta work through that.
They gotta put jokes in it though, or I'm not gonna watch it. In the making jokes about your trauma kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which they obviously would. Look at him.
Yeah. Look at him. You look like a Sprinkles guy. Yeah. But then, Fizz then immediately strikes a nerve in Blitz by saying, guess that's what resilience and talent gets ya. Yeah. Which, again, childhood best friends.
Yeah. Said, hey, I know your deep-seated trauma, the fact that you weren't good enough for your dad, and I'm going to bring it up.
The only person who could ever get your ass like that. Yeah.
Except for maybe, a sibling.
Maybe, yeah.
But a sibling, you can be bitch, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, going back a little bit, we already said the ESA thing, but when Fizz is upset about what Blitz said, the little Quevy in the wheelchair actually comes up and nuzzles him and gives him a bone, which gave me another thing,
Yeah.
like, of, like, being able to see when he's upset and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Back to the resilience and talent. Yeah. So, right after this is said, Fizz is, like, looking, or, I don't know if it's, I think it might be before. Yes.
Yeah.
He's, like, feeling hurt, and then he takes the bone, and then the bone falls, and he sees the message on the leash that's, like, from Ozzy. It's, like, a love message or something. And immediately, like, gets the confidence to talk back, which is really interesting to me.
I think so, too. Yeah. Calling Blitz... Sorry, I can't read our own notes. Calling Blitz untalented in circus arts, which Blitz has believed since he was a kid. Like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, not only the, I know you weren't good enough for your dad and I'm gonna call it out, but also, like, I know that you have so much self-loathing because you could never be as good as me and I'm gonna call it out.
Yeah, and sort of even being like, you're right to feel that way.
Yeah, like, you have a ton of self-loathing and it's correct.
Yeah, like, you think you suck and you're right.
Do, yeah.
Yeah. They both start their statements with, yeah, well.
Yeah.
Like, just similar speech patterns, from growing up together and such.
Yeah, and it's like they're so similar, but but they hate each other.
Yeah.
And then Fizz says, "My horns were always bigger than yours, weren't they?"
Yeah.
Which he's just calling himself better. You know?
Yeah.
Like being
hyping
like,
himself up.
I'm better than you. I was better at performing than you. I'm better than you now. I I do my own shit. And the weren't they because you fucking burned them off, bitch.
Yeah. It's such a direct attack.
Yeah. And then, speaking of, Blitz literally physically attacks him.
Yes.
He just, because what happens is, I think it's the, when he says, talent gets ya, and Blitz
like,
just stops and freezes and just stands there.
Like the standing guy emoji.
Yeah. And then he says, "My horns were always bigger than yours, weren't they?" And he just runs at him, tackles him.
Yeah. And then when they fight, 2 condoms and a horse plushie fly out of their pockets. Obviously, the horse plushie is Blitz's. Which is so cute.
Yes, because this is comfort item. He's so mentally well. He's so neurotypical for that.
Yeah, totally. Whose condoms? Both? One each?
I did look to see if they're their color schemes. They're not, which that would have been really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, whose condoms? One each. Does Blitz have them for Stolas? Like, where is Blitz going right now? Where is Fizz going right now? Fizz just having them because Ozzy is king of lust. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But also, like...
Yeah, if we're having... It makes sense if it's, like... Horse plushie flies up and then 2 condoms fly up, so it's like that's Blitz's, that's Fizz's. So I sort of lean towards them both being.
But they all fly up at the same time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just a whirlwind.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. 2 condoms seems specifically animated, and I really like it.
Yeah. Moving on to Crimson.
Yep. So they pan up the building, and there's Crimson. But his voice is said first. He says something.
Yeah.
So that was a big reveal, because it's like, is that fucking Crimson? And then you zoom into the office, and it's like, fuck.
Yeah. We hear the voice of Richard Horvitz.
Yeah. But the bad one.
Yeah. Moxie, but a few degrees to the left.
Yeah. Lower and more Italian.
Yeah.
And this episode generally just ties everything together well. I feel the need to say that. Like, we had so many different settings and like characters in this season so far. And we're halfway in. Yeah. Maybe a little more.
This episode's exactly halfway.
Okay, we're halfway in and all this stuff, and then this episode they're like, bring it all together. This is what's gonna happen for the rest.
Yeah, and we were saying for a while before this episode, like, they were very much gearing up to have all of the villains kind of come together, and this is sort of the first hint of that, where we get Stryker and Crimson working together, and then soon after in Full Moon we get the Cherubs and the agent people working together. So it's kind of, it was some vindication of like, oh, they're doing the thing we thought they were gonna do. They're putting all the bad guys together.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they will all be even more together later on, which is exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, but also terrifying for our protags.
Yeah.
But this is also Crimson's office in Greed, which is interesting because we do see some business done at his home. Like, obviously, they bring the bodies there and stuff. So, like, what kind of what kind of business is conducted in the office versus at home? Like, are only mafia members allowed to conduct business in the home? Is this where he meets people for the first time and like scouts them out? I don't know. The fact that he has an office in Greed is interesting. And it rose a lot of questions for me, but I don't really have any answers to them.
Yeah. Stryker has a body count in the hundreds, which, you know, he's a hitman.
Yeah.
It's obviously talking about murders.
Yeah.
But from what we know about Stryker, I personally think asexual Stryker is so fucking funny.
Yeah.
So I'm choosing to believe it until it's proven otherwise.
Was he in the Pride Post?
No, we looked last time we talked about this. We checked, I think, on the podcast as well.
Yeah, I think we did too, now that you're saying that.
But
I really like the idea of Ace Stryker too, because he's always so appalled. He's like, what the fuck? Stop talking sex at me.
Why is it always a sex thing?
He's either so scarily vanilla and like, you know how people say that sometimes people are so vanilla that they're Ace adjacent?
Yeah.
He's either that or he's like Ace.
Yeah, he's like heterosexual missionary sex with the lights off.
And like I have to have a deep connection with you. So like Demi, I guess he's on that Ace spectrum somewhere. I think.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks he's so sexy is the thing.
Yeah.
So like if he wanted to have sex, he could have a body count in the hundreds. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Stryker will kill anything, anyone, women, children, cute little faced puppy looking things, which I guess if we're talking about killing, then it's good that this isn't his body count for sex.
Yeah. I think also
I've got a body count in the hundreds. Women, children, cute little puppies.
yeah, no, you're right. That's good. Yeah, it definitely is for killing, but also I think the fact that Stryker doesn't even like consider that it could be read another way also is really funny, because he's like, what would the other body count be? Like that's something he would say. But yeah, and one of the Quevies like slams into the window and he goes, cute puppy face looking things. So like the fact that he will kill anyone and anything is terrifying.
Yeah. And then Crimson says, if you can deliver something of value, I'll consider it. Stryker immediately captures both Blitz and Fizz.
Yeah, Fizz, who's an extremely monetarily valuable hostage, and Blitz, who both Crimson and Stryker hate, just immediately. And then Crimson just goes, hired!
Yeah, but this was just a test.
Yeah.
Like, so Crimson was looking to hire Stryker for something else, presumably to do a hit on Moxie, because we know that that's who Crimson plans on targeting. Yeah. The thesis of this episode, what are the fucking odds?
Yeah, because like Blitz and Fizz in the same place, and then Crimson is here, and then they get captured, and also Stryker is here.
Yeah.
What are the fucking odds? And then Stolas and Blitz Ozzy are together.
Yeah.
So that is the thesis.
Yeah.
Speaking of them, Stryker calls Blitz Blitzy.
Yeah.
Just like fucking Stolas did in Harvest Moon. He didn't like it.
He did not like it. Yeah. Crimson calls Fizz and Ozzy's relationship the worst kept secret in all of hell.
Yeah.
Like, it's really funny to me how, like, everyone fucking knows. That's why I wonder, like, I'm sure things will change now that they're, like, public as a relationship, but I think it'd be really funny if they make this big deal of being like, I love Fizz and we're dating and we don't even have sex, we're just in love! and then everyone's like, yeah, okay, cool, that's good, we knew. Okay.
I also like that they're canonically, and this is for Mammon, but they canonically have like a fan base dedicated to shipping them.
Yeah.
Because that person's like, they kissed, they're in love.
Keyboard smash, yeah.
But yeah, and then Crimson also doesn't bother filming Blitz for anyone. He could have easily filmed him, sent it to Moxie, got Moxie there to kill him like he wants to.
Yeah.
He could have easily got monetary value for him from anyone that he had at the estate.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't even bother.
No.
It could be that he just wants to have one task at a time. He just wants to have one, monetary bribing of a hostage happening at once.
Yeah.
But also
Fro's got that work-life balance.
True. But it also kind of gives the vibe of like Blitz isn't good enough.
Yeah.
To be like, they're like, I'm gonna hold you hostage, but like no one's gonna come for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. And it's fucked.
But, like, if it had been Sentinel and Moxie, they would have come for him.
Exactly. Luna would have come. The whole gang would have been there.
But, like, the fact that, like, societally, Blitz is seen as such a nobody that he didn't even think to send him to anyone is...
Or even if he does know, like, you know, Moxie and those other people, they would probably come for him. But he, like, one thing we said about Crimson was that he immediately saw, like, how to get to Blitz, like, how to get on his good side. So I'm in the same vein, I'm sure he knows exactly how to fuck him up, too.
Yeah.
Like, when he first met Blitz, he was like, oh, yeah, you're, like, I've been hearing about your name, and, like, the business you've got is cool, like, you know, really sucking up to him. So, like, him, like, putting aside his own plans for Moxie, which also maybe he has, like, a specific plan for what to do with Moxie, you know? And just being like, I could use Blitz to my advantage, but I think it'll fuck him up more if I just don't.
No, making him feel like nothing, too. Especially because, like, I don't know if Crimson was just, like, I think until now we were thinking that Crimson was just saying all the, like, the nice stuff and, like, you're a hard worker, like, all that to him to, like, you know, butter him up so that he could get away with the Moxie stuff. But also it is possible that Crimson genuinely wants to recruit him to the family. Because he is a really good worker and he is really good at crime and hits and things like that.
That's true.
So maybe he's trying to do kind of the opposite there, where he's trying to, like, make him feel like a no one so that he wants to prove himself to Crimson, which obviously does not work. But I could see that also being the motive. But either way, it makes him feel like complete shit, makes him feel like nothing, and makes Fizz this very valuable item, which parallels their childhood greatly.
Yeah. This would be a completely different episode if Stolas knew that Blitz was there.
Yeah. But also it makes me wonder, would it? Like it would, but how? Like,
I think there wouldn't be an episode because, like, we see how Stolas rescues them in Truth Seekers. I feel like, I don't know, he's got a lot of power that he can make use of whenever he wants to.
Yeah, but Ozzy is, first of all, higher class. Second of all, not higher class, lower by one. I always forget if the sins are one higher or one lower.
Let me check, actually.
But either way, Ozzy has a bunch of power and he can't get through this whole thing. He's strong. He can do all that. He can't get through it. And Stolas, like, you know, things are pretty dire and he's not doing anything either.
Yeah. No, you're right. The sins are above the Ars Goetia. So yeah. I don't know. I just think, but, like, they would both be working together, and that's two very powerful people.
That's true. And also, but the thing is, like, how strongly and what feelings does Stolas currently feel for Blitz? And would he, like, go and save him? Because when they saved him in Truth Seekers, they were still very close. Yeah,
but this is pre-full moon, and I think anything pre-full moon is enough.
That's true, but this is also post-Aussies.
And post-Western Energy. But, I don't know.
Oh, that's also true. His powers might be stifled. Because
maybe
we don't see any, like, physical damage, but that's also just, you know, he was hospitalized.
Yeah, I think Stolas is, I think there would definitely be, like, a petty and, like, deeply upset part of him that's like, well, Blitz didn't come save me, or, like, I'm angry at him, but I think Stolas would go.
I think he would too. I just wonder, like, how much energy would he put into it, and, like, how quickly would he jump to it. I think it would be different than Truth Seekers.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It's also different because, like, in this episode, Ozzy and Stolas, they don't go. They're just trying to, like, negotiate these freaking contracts and shit. So I don't know. Maybe they would still do the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and we have a whole other bullet point about Stolas and Ozzy. Like, it's separated a bit, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that's a thinker. Like, how, like, it would be different, but how?
I think there just definitely is a reason why Stolas doesn't know.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I cannot wait for that reveal.
Yeah.
For Stolas to find out if he does.
Yeah, because I don't know if he would, because, like, Fizz and Blitz didn't see their reaction to the video. And Blitz doesn't see Stolas, but, like, maybe I could see, like, not that this would happen, but this is what all the fucking fan comics are like. But, like, you know, everything's happy. And they're having, they're hanging out, the couples. They're hanging out, they're having a dinner. And then Ozzy's like, yeah, remember when we had to save this one from that? And Fizz is like, oh yeah, Blitz, remember? And they're like, what? Yeah. Or maybe, or no, because Fizz also says that Blitz earned Stolas earns giving the crystal to Blitz because he earned it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if Fizz has told Ozzy that Blitz was there.
And Ozzy just assumes that Blitz told Stolas because they've got their own thing going on.
Yeah, so I think there could be a really roundabout scenario that would work.
Yeah.
I don't know that it will happen, but I want it to.
It's like, this is such a shit reference, but it's like in Friends when everyone one by one is finding out that Monica and Chandler are together, and then Phoebe finds out and Rachel's like, yes, I know and Joey knows, but Ross doesn't know, so you have to stop screaming! So it's like, Blitz knows and Fizz knows and Ozzy knows, but Stolas doesn't know, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah. There is definitely things like that in this show, but I wish they leaned into it more, where it's like just one person doesn't know, because it makes the tension so much more. But anyway, going back to them being hostages, when they're tied up and they're in the cage, Fizz is like struggling and whimpering and like wiggling, trying to get out, and Blitz is just slides in and just sits.
Yeah.
Just so still. Doesn't try to get out, doesn't make any noise. Homeboy's so traumatized. Why is he so calm in this situation?
But he does also have the knife on the bottom of his shoe. Like, I think he does know, like, okay, we just gotta wait for our moment. Like, we'll get out of here.
That's true, but there's no surge of panic. Like, even when he's captured, he's just like...
Well, just a Tuesday.
And, like, some of it definitely comes to the job, but also, like, I don't know. He, like, how calm he is eerie to me. And I feel like there's probably just multiple things at play, like a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. It was very interesting dynamic and, like, not parallel, but foil, I guess. Yeah. And then Blitz says, it's like you've never been tied up before.
Sure, but not by a bunch of psychos and a piece of shit.
And then Blitz goes, wait, okay, am I the psycho or the piece of shit?
Both!
Yeah. But, so when has Fizz been tied up? Is it in anything other than a sexual context? And if it's only in a sexual context, how does Blitz know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's one thing to just assume in a joking way, and that could be all this is, but it's just, like, the fact that this dialogue flowed so nicely left me with a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after Fizz says both, Blitz goes, yeah, that checks.
Yeah.
Just so real.
He knew he was either the psycho or the piece of shit. How often has he been called these names? Not by Fizz, because I haven't talked in 15 years, but just in general. Like, he's used to being the psycho and or the piece of shit.
And I think we've seen him get called a piece of shit before. And also, him calling himself a piece of shit makes sense. It gives big BoJack Horseman vibes. But yeah.
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 Yeah. And then who says this next line that we have? Is that
that's Blitz.
That's Blitz, yeah.
Unlike you, I fuck who I want when I want. I'm not going to be tied down to some big blue blood asshole.
Yeah. Which, the, like, tied down part of that is especially hurtful because Fizz works very hard.
And he's not, to our knowledge, like, stuck with Ozzy. You know, he's choosing to be there. Which... very end of this episode, there's a tiny thing that kind of contradicts that, but tied down is very specific. You're right.
Yeah. And it raises a question of, does Blitz think that Ozzy treats Fizz the same way that Stolas treats him?
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It is interesting because why would he think anything else?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's got this, you know. The royals are all the same. And, like, does he have such a low view of Fizz settling with Ozzy because of how he'd feel about himself if he settled with Stolas because of the way that Stolas treats him? You know? Like, is he like, okay, Fizz is actively being, like, belittled and treated like a little plaything and is settling for that.
Yeah.
He's fucking stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Again, thesis of the show, miscommunication at its finest, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he says, Stolas only cares about having a rugged peasant raw dog him into his mattress, which Fizz does not buy, does not believe that Stolas doesn't like Blitz, literally rolls his eyes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because, Stolas is very much, in the wrong. So is Blitz in his own way, but Stolas is very much, he's like, when have I ever belittled you? Cut to 6-hour compilation of him belittling Blitz. But then it's also very clear, at least to other people, that Stolas does actually like and care about Blitz.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting combination.
I think also, too, going back a little bit, the whole thing is that... So Blitz assumes that Fizz is being treated the same way that Stolas treats him by Ozzy, but then Fizz is probably assuming that Stolas is treating Blitz as nicely as Ozzy treats him.
Yeah.
So he's probably like, oh my god, you stupid moron, get over yourself, let someone take care of you.
Yeah.
Because obviously that is a huge thing of Blitz's problem, and even just knowing him in childhood, he fucking knows that.
I love when people know each other.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's probably what he's assuming. He's like, get over your stupid fucking self. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case, because the whole, Stolas only cares about having a rugged peasant raw dog him into a mattress, for lack of better line. That's not true, but also, it is a little bit.
It is a little bit, yeah.
There is some fetishizing there, intentionally on Stolas' part or not. Maybe it's not actually fetishizing, he's just that's just, he's trying to make it more comfortable. I don't know. There could be a lot of things. It could not intentionally be fetishizing Blitz, but that is what's happening, regardless of the intention. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's interesting, because it's all this stuff that it's like, oh my god, you stupid dude, get your shit together. But it's it's all a little true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not unfounded.
Mm-hmm. I also really like when Fizz goes, whatever, I don't actually care, and Blitz just keeps talking about it. And we wrote that, we feel like this might be how they were as kids. I feel like we know for a fact this is how they were as kids, but the whole, no pirates! The Great Pirate War!
No, ew, no blood. Which we'll get into in the Man episode.
Yeah.
But did you want to take the clown and jester thing?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of concrete thoughts on this. But we wrote this down in our notes a long time ago, so we're going to bring it up and discuss. It's a Tumblr post by Ammonite the Sea Serpent, who hopefully doesn't mind that we're reading out their post. And they said, something about how a clown's whole thing is to make themselves the butt of the joke and take everything thrown at them, while a jester's whole thing is to freely call out and ridicule the king, however they choose something. Something. Yeah. Which is really interesting. This was originally tagged as a Helluva post, and it was, I believe, in response to this episode. And it's interesting to think about the sort of dichotomy here of, clowns and jesters, and how Fizz and Blitz fit into that. Because I think throughout the show, clown and jester are used somewhat interchangeably. I don't know that they're necessarily following this kind of structure.
I think it's also interesting, though, because I don't know that we've ever heard Blitz called a jester. I think they're only used interchangeably for Fizz.
Yeah. I don't know. But it's interesting, how, the characters in the show use this language versus, what's actually true. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't know, in a way, Fizz is, sort of, the butt of the joke, just, in his, career, where he has to, overwork himself and such. He's sort of, I don't know, taking everything thrown at them. That gives me a lot of Fizz's energy, but it's also very much Blitz, especially as a kid, because he's, literally the butt of the joke. No one's entertained by him unless they're laughing at him.
Yeah.
But then the idea of, calling out and ridiculing the quote-unquote king, which for Blitz would be Stolas, for Fizz would be Ozzy. Fizz doesn't really call out or ridicule Ozzy.
Yeah.
But he also, I don't know, he's more, what's the word I'm looking for? He's of higher status than Blitz.
Yeah.
You know, like, a jester is also, another difference is that the jester is, like, part of a king's royal court.
Right.
A clown is not.
Yeah. Which also, you think about that, Fizz is hired by Mammon.
And by he works at Ozzy's restaurant.
So it's like he is part of the upper working class, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's a high class performer.
Yeah.
Whereas Blitz comes, I'm pretty sure it's widely accepted lower class. And is a self-centered entrepreneur of a not so hot running business right now.
Yeah.
So, like, even class-wise, you know, like...
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And then, like, royalty seeing Fizz and Blitz as being below them, but then also Fizz is above Blitz and seeing himself as above Blitz. Like, this very interesting, like, it's not just a matter of, like, okay, we've got imps and then Hellborn and then, you know, royalty and like, there's still intricacies within all of those specific ranks.
Yeah.
And just on an extremely interpersonal level. Yeah.
I think a few other things that came to mind too. I think when they're little and they're in the circus performing together, we do also see that clown and jester vibe, because Fizz is always picking on Blitz, which I know that Blitz isn't the king, but I mean, in one way he is, because he's the kid of the ringmaster, but that's a separate thing. But yeah, like, Fizz is picking fun of someone else, like, having laughs at someone else's expense, while making it so Blitz is being the butt of the joke. So, like, that's clown and jester very clearly right there.
Yeah.
And then also, I think the fact that kind of Fizz gets to perform now and not be a butt of a joke, like, he gets to be famous and he gets to, like, he calls out Blitz and, like, other people while he's performing at Ozzy's, like, that's very jester, like, and then also just the fact that he's not the butt of the joke in general.
Yeah.
Ever, really. Whereas Blitz is constantly being looked down upon, constantly getting insulted, like, things like that. You know, I think it plays out in their adult lives, like, as a whole as well.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And I think the language, too, is interesting, because the things that different people call them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people call Fizz a jester, but in this episode, I think he's called a clown a lot, and so is Blitz.
Yeah. Very interesting thoughts. Tumblr user Ammonite the Sea Serpent. Cheers. Yeah, but moving on from that, Blitz goes on to say, royal demons don't give a shit about guys like us. They're all the fucking same. Which I think it's also very interesting how, like, Fizz sees himself... the question of, does Fizz see himself above Blitz? Because I think Blitz generally, whether he likes to admit it or not, does see Fizz as above him. But then also he says guys like us here. And so there's sort of, like, I don't know, a disconnect between, like, I don't know. I'd be curious, like, how they actually think of themselves in regards to each other, because I'm sure that's a big, like, insecurity Blitz has that he may not address. It may be pushed way down, but I don't know if Fizz actually feels the same or not.
I think it is interesting because, like, obviously Blitz does feel less than him.
Yes.
But does he actually societally be like, Fizz is higher up in status than me, or is he like, that's other fucking imp kid that I did the circus with, you know, like...
Yeah.
The fact that they grew up together in the same, like, even though he performed better, like, they were the same class and everything.
Yeah.
Probably makes him feel more similar to him.
Yeah.
Like, because who else is similar to him?
Right. Yeah. And he says a lot to Fizz in this episode of, like, that's sort of on the defensive of, like, you know, at least I work for my success. You just get everything handed to you. You settle with this guy. And that, to me, implies, like, a jealousy... I mean, definitely a jealousy, but also sort of this implication of, like, he made it. Like, of the two of us, I'm still here working, and he, like, got out and made it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
I think that is interesting. I think also we see next episode, I think, the flashback of them when they're teens, kind of that dynamic start.
Yeah.
When they're like 16.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, that's really embedded in there.
Yes.
But yeah, and then to that, Fizz says that's not always true, and he looks like really sad, and there's a pause. It's like, that's not, he like goes to say it's not true, and then he's like, always true.
Yeah.
So like, is Fizz actually still a little unsure?
Yeah.
I don't actually want to say is. He definitely is.
Yeah.
Of the fact that like, does Ozzy actually like him, or is it a fetishizing thing? Is it because he is a good performer and nothing else? And we see that insecurity in the next episode a lot.
Yeah. Fizz falls into Blitz, and they both blush, which is just more to the not childhood, but like teenage Fizz and Blitz, and the romance that never was.
Yeah,
makes me feel crazy.
Yeah, and I want Blitz to like offhandedly be like, yeah, when I like had a huge crush on you, and Fizz be like, what?
What? Yeah. This is just like the pairing that Casey requested. Literally, it's not even a spoiler because this is like how it opens.
Yeah.
But like the one person, Theo, like he's talking about how when they were younger, Theo had a crush on Kit, and then is like, oh, but I'm totally over it now, and Kit's like, oh, I had a crush on you too, and then they like kiss like just for fun, and then Theo's like, I lied, I never got over mine, and Kit's like, yeah, no, I never got over mine either. She was dating for 2 years.
That's good.
Similar energy to me.
Yeah, it is. I think it would also be interesting. I don't know that this would happen, but I think it would be interesting if now that Stolas is, you know, fucking around and Blitz is letting him do that. Not that he should have to let him, but you know, he's not on his ass about it.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting if he tries to go to Fizz and be like, hey, you know, I really liked you as a kid. Do you want to like fuck?
Yeah.
And like, what would Fizz do? Like, probably say no, but also Ozzy would entertain a threesome, I think.
Well, the question is, would Ozzy entertain a threesome with Fizz's childhood best friend?
That's the thing. Yeah.
But I personally think it's very possible that there will be a fallout between Fizz and Ozzy.
And if that just happens to coincide when Blitz is like, hey, do you want to like try things out? And maybe even if he's like, do you want to try things out and take them really, really slow? Yeah. And then that's really good for both of them.
Because my thing is the little hints that are thrown in here and there about Fizz and Blitz's childhood feelings for Fizz, that's not in there for no reason. Yeah. And like that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna like have a thing, but it's gonna lead to something. Yeah. So I like, with also the little hints that are here and there about like things not actually being so picture perfect between Fizz and Ozzy, I think it's very possible that some sort of fallout, like breakup, you know, temporary breakup, probably, who knows, but like I don't know. I think it's. I'm very much rooting for a little Blitz and Fizz.
Even if it's not long term, just a little fling.
Just a little fling.
I think it would fix both of them.
Yeah. Maybe Stolas and Ozzy get together. I don't know. Maybe we just totally flip flop things here.
They're what's a thruple when there's four? A quadruple.
Quadruple. Polycule.
Polycule. That's yeah. I would also love to see like Fizz, like Blitz comes on to Fizz and Fizz, you know, kisses him or something. Yeah. Like something that's cheating but not like fucking him, you know? Yeah. And he feels horrible about it, and then they break up and he's like, oh, it's all my fault, but then he slowly realizes like issues with the relationship and realizes like, yeah, it was all his fault, but like the cheating was all his fault, but like the breakup wasn't. I would love to see that kind of arc.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Stryker chimes into this discussion and is like, you two are both embarrassments to our kind for meddling with blue bloods to begin with. Sorry,
Stryker accent.
I had to do the voice. Yeah, but all three of them, like Blitz, Fizz, Stryker, they're all imps who grew up lower class. Arguably, Stryker maybe even like the lowest class of the three of them because of Wrath and what we know about the rings. But all three of them have these very like distinct, varying views on the quote unquote blue bloods, the royals, due to how much they've been hurt by them and how much they've helped them succeed. Whereas like you know, Stryker, we don't know the specifics, but we know he lost everything to royalty. He said that in Western Energy. Blitz, hasn't been, or he has like his own startup business that he like built from the ground up himself, but then he has the help of Stolas's grimoire. So he's aided by royalty in that way. And then we have Fizz, who very much like directly employed by Memon, and then even like works at Ozzy's place. Like, so these three different levels of like how tied they are to royalty and how much they depend on them versus, how much they, like, on the flip side with Stryker, do not depend on them.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really interesting seeing their three perspectives on it.
I think also how much they've been hurt by them is also really important here because, like, Fizz, mostly feels good about royalty. Obviously, he probably has some internalized stuff from growing up lower class. But, he was successful with the circus, too, even though it was, like, a shitty little circus. And he probably had, like, pickups coming for him and stuff. So he has a completely different experience than the other two. And he probably doesn't have many, if any, ill feelings towards royalty at all. Yeah. And then Stryker fucking hates them. And then Blitz is both, like, doesn't like them fundamentally, but also is kind of hurt by them, but also kind of helped from them. And that's a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
He's, like, truly the middleman here.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes him the protagonist of these three, fundamentally, and I think that's what makes... I think these three perspectives from Blitz, Stryker, and Fizz are sort of, like, making up the core fundamental themes of the show.
Yeah.
And I think it's all going to come back to them in one way or another. Which is good because I like Fizz.
Yeah, Fizz is my favy.
And I like Stryker. And I like Blitz.
Yeah.
These are all people I like.
And then that kind of leads into Stryker's morals as a whole are so interesting. Because he hates royals. Very much so. And he hates, like, in this, he hates non-royals for associating with royals. But then the main characters, including Millie and Moxie, who don't actually have a strong tie to a blue blood at all, like, obviously they are employed by Blitz, who uses the grimoire, but, like, they're not really using the grimoire. They're not fucking Stolas, he still antagonizes them. And he still, like, fights them and takes hits on people that aren't blue blood and things like that. I mean, he even takes orders from Stella, who is a blue blood. Yeah. So it's, like, it's interesting moral-wise, and then also, like, internal morals versus survival.
Yes.
And, like, the overall goal of getting rid of blue bloods. Like, he took the hit on Stolas from Stella, who's a blue blood, but it's killing a blue blood. Yeah. And then also, like, he needs to take these hits to survive. He needs, like, he needs to live. Yeah. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah, I think the Stryker's, like, sort of essentially boils down to, like, I think he has his own, like, goals that he keeps in the back of his mind, and, like, anytime he has to do a hit or, like, he's faced with an opportunity, he, like, does whatever he needs to do to, like, continue on the path forward towards what he needs. Which is very much like Blitz in a way. Like, we talked about Blitz being resourceful. I think Stryker is very good at, like, looking at a situation and being like, okay, this is what I need to do in this situation. Even if it doesn't always line up exactly with, like, his core beliefs, he's always working towards a goal that coincides with his core beliefs. Yeah. And that's cool.
Yeah, I think it is really cool. I think Stryker and Blitz, some of the best written characters in this show. They're so strong. Yeah. And then Blitz says, "Oh, great, the fucking supremacist is on my side. Wonderful." Yeah, one of my fave lines.
Yeah, Blitz truly is the middle ground here. Yeah. Then Stryker grabs Fizz by the face, which makes Fizz look very scared.
Fair enough.
And Blitz becomes very angry and growls, like he's prepared to, like, protect him like old times. They were literally just arguing, but immediately, like, they don't actually want each other to get hurt.
Yeah, here. And that makes me think, was that like a thought, or was that an innate reaction?
Right.
Like, that was okay, Fizz is, like, no thoughts, just like, oh my god, Fizz is hurt. And just, like, right back to when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
I thought that little detail was really interesting.
And then Crimson says, "Hey, hit for hire. I said watch him, not fuck him. Keep your hands off the merchandise." Such a cunt. Crimson is so cunty. Homophobic, but still chill with being like, yeah, Stryker's gay.
Yeah.
He's starting to get down with it, you know? Like, you gotta be more with the times to, like, look at Stryker and be like, oh, that's a gay man.
Yeah. I think also saying that if Stryker is ace, and then Stryker's one time like, you know, I'm ace. Yeah. And he's like, you're a fucking card? A fucking another one? Like,
yeah.
He doesn't like pronouns. He doesn't like terms.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then our next bit is Stolas and Ozzy. We are at an hour and a half.
This is the last section we have, though.
Yeah. So, but I'm saying we should try to make it
speed run a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. We open with Ozzy's sex toy factory. Ozzy says, "You can never be too large. You can never be too large."
Yeah. He's like looking at a blueprint with a group, and he's like, "You can never be too large. You can never be too large."
Yeah. He refers to Stolas as Birdie Babe, which is so funny.
Hey there, Birdie Babe.
Hey there, Birdie Babe. Brings up the events that happened at Ozzy's. Immediately.
They're not even in the room yet.
Yeah. There's sort of this suspenseful music that transitions into Stolas' theme, which like continues as Ozzy's talking. And then that music again transitions back to like the Ozzy and Fizz sort of theme when he's talking about pleasure. Yeah,
when he's like that road to Pleasure Town and like explaining how lust shouldn't be forced.
Yeah. And then it goes back to Stolas' theme. We love music.
Yeah, we love. I think this is one of the most interesting sequences we've had in one scene because it's so like and it's so nicely transitioned. Like they do like a little run on the keyboard and then it transitions. It's really cool.
Yeah. Ozzy immediately shuts down the love potions.
Yeah, so like Stolas doesn't ask for one, by the way. But you know, the love potions, that's the thing that Val sells in Has-Been. And it's the thing that's in his breath.
Yeah.
And Ozzy's immediately like, if you want one of those love potions, you came to the wrong place, and he's like pissed.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great because that's showing the fact that lust is about like it's about pleasure, not and consent, while greed is about force and abuse.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that a little bit, and we'll talk about that more in Mammon, but like that fundamentally is just so good.
It's so good.
It's one of my favorite like points that's made in this show.
Yeah. Apparently I
take this?
Yeah, you take this.
There's a really big thing online, and I think it is all you 11 or 12-year-olds that watch this show because of the way that you fucking edit with the CapCut and make these videos. I think it's all of you.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm sorry if you're literally a child and you're saying this and I'm shitting on you. Because obviously you don't really understand this stuff yet. But there's this whole thing. So Ozzy gives that speech, and then Stolas is like, oh, no, never that. Meaning he's dismissing the love potions, he's not dismissing consent, but so many of you take it like that, and talking about how, like, Stolas doesn't honor consent, which, like, as a theory is fine, but then a lot of you justify him, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Like, I obviously don't get to say on what you say on the internet, but, like, no.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And it's something I've seen so much recently, and it fucking baffles me how you could even get that. And then also the fact of, like, it's actively doing the opposite thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, I think that they say consent is bad. And it's like, no, that is not what's happening. It's not what's happening.
This is all news to me.
I've seen it so much. And, like, if it was one edit, that'd be fine. I've seen like probably 10 total.
Yeah.
And like that for a weird ass thing like that's a lot. But yeah, I needed to address that. He's saying he's dismissing the love potions, not consent.
Yeah.
Ozzy likes consent. Stolas doesn't have a clear thing on consent, but I don't think he dislikes it.
Yeah. Well, he dismisses the love potions. So
yeah,
I think he clearly is he's all for consent. We all love consent.
We all love consent. Don't use Helluva Boss as a ticket to dismiss consent. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, even before I was just reading our notes, even before I read it, I was like, I wonder, like, does Ozzy know about Val? Like, surely he'd kick his fucking ass,
but Val's pride. Val's not employed by Ozzy is the thing. So he might not.
Yeah.
But, like, I've seen a lot of edits that are about this, and I really like them, honestly. But like, if Ozzy found out about Val, like, what would happen?
I don't know.
And all the edits, he just beats the shit out of him, and like, likely.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like,
because going back to the hierarchy chart, which I just had up, the only people above the 7 deadly sins are Charlie and her parents.
Yeah.
And I don't think they would be upset about him beating the shit out of them.
No, I don't think so either. And then also, like, there's a whole thing about how, like, Charlie and Ozzy know each other, and it's, like, her uncle. I don't think that's true, actually, canonically, but I like it. Yeah. But anyway, if that were true, or if they had some connection, and, Charlie went to Ozzy and was like, hey, could you, like, stop Val? Like, like, you're all about lust, and, like, I don't... Or even if she goes up to him and is, like, angry and is like, you need to shut down love potions. Like, people are getting hurt. And he's like, I don't give out love potions. Who the fuck is giving out love potions? But also, he knows about the love potions. Mm-hmm. So if Val is the only one who distributes them, because they all have his face on them. Yeah.
Something that's always been tricky for me about the politics of hell in this universe is, like... The whole thing with hell, and I know in Has-Been they get into, like it's unclear, like, how someone gets into heaven. Mm-hmm. Like, I think we need to re-examine, like, you know, who goes to hell and who goes to heaven. Like, I get that, but, you know, fundamentally, hell is for the bad people. Yeah. Like, that's where people like Val are supposed to be. Yeah. So that raises the question of, like, what are they actually supposed to do to... Ice Machine. What are they actually supposed to do to, like, you know... take responsibility for these bad people. Yeah. Like, because it's hell. Like,
yeah, no, that is a really good question, especially because, you know, Val is a sinner.
Yeah. An overlord, but a sinner.
But a sinner. So, like, he came from Earth, he was shitty, he got sent to hell.
Yeah. So
he belongs there, that makes sense. Yeah. And, like, he hurts people, and that makes sense, and it... But then, like, could Ozzy even do anything
about it? Because it's not like with, like, Mammon. Like, that's another sin. He probably can't kill him even if he wants to. That's probably not allowed. Yeah. But, like, yeah, because the idea might be, like, especially if Val, which I don't know if we know this for certain, but if Val is only, like, targeting and having these relationships with other sinners, then that might just kind of be like, we let the sinners do their own thing because they all suck, you know?
I think the only people that might have some jurisdiction over it are Charlie and Lucifer and the King of Pride, because, like, Val would be under his jurisdiction. Yeah. I don't know who the King of Pride is. Is that Lucifer? Or is the Sin of Pride? I was going to say, I don't know if it's Lucifer, if there's a Sin of Pride that is in charge. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
And then Lucifer does have a very much, like, oh, we just let them do their own thing mentality of being king. Yeah. And, like, obviously Charlie tried to do something and it didn't work, but she did it more in an interpersonal way. Like, I think she forgot that she's the fucking queen of hell, and she can do what she wants.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Lucifer is the Sin of Pride.
Yeah, I said it and then I was like, oh, actually, I think that's just Lucifer. Yeah. So I don't...
Oh, the Sin of Wrath is Satan. That's interesting. Sorry, I don't know anything about hell lore in real life.
But yeah, I don't know that Ozzy would have any jurisdiction over it. Yeah. Which is weird because it's directly related to lust. Yeah. But then also, like, if we were gonna put them under a jurisdiction, under a jurisdiction of a sin by, like, type of sin that he's doing, would it even be lust or would it be greed?
That's true, yeah.
So, yeah, I think, like, either way, I don't think Ozzy would have any control over it.
Well, I think it would still, if it were to be up to one of the rings, I think it would be lust because, like, Val isn't breaking the rules of greed, you know? Like, that is what greed is. But I think he is breaking the rules of lust.
But if we're going to be under a jurisdiction, what I'm saying is he focusing on lust or is he focusing on greed? Because even if he's not doing anything wrong in the rules of greed would be like, okay, you're under my jurisdiction, cool, keep doing it. Yeah. That's true. I think Val, as fundamentally as a being, functions more on greed than lust. Yes. It's just that everything he does is in a sexual context. All of his greed is sexual. Yeah. And monetary, and fame, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, it's... The whole thing's interesting to me. I wish that it made sense for Ozzy to just beat the shit out of Val and have that all be over. But then it wouldn't be as complicated of a world.
Yeah. But anyway. Stolas is requesting an Asmodean crystal for Blitz, which he gets in Full Moon and Look My Way.
Yeah. But that's just what the meeting's about. I felt the need to note it.
Yeah. Who says this line?
Ozzy during the meeting says, my business partner.
Yeah, about Fizz.
Yeah.
Ozzy knows that Fizz doesn't like Blitz. Like, it's very clear from his reaction here.
And he says it.
Which, like, how much does Ozzy know about the fire? What has Fizz told him? How much did seeing Blitz at Ozzy's affect Fizz? Like, is that something they talked about afterwards?
Yeah.
And then also, which to me I think could be where their, like, fallout comes from in the future, is because we find out this episode that, like, Fizz and Blitz, or, like, Blitz tried to contact Fizz but was, like, sent away, or, like, his messages didn't go through. I think it's very possible Ozzy, you know, I don't know if the timeline of this works out, but it's possible that Ozzy was the one, like, keeping him away.
Yeah.
And if Fizz finds that out, that could lead to a fallout between them.
Yeah, that whole bit is next episode when they're actually talking about it. Or, like, it's this episode, but next episode for our podcast.
Yes.
And I am very excited to talk about that. But yeah, it makes me wonder too, did he try to visit him in the hospital when he was sent away? Did he try to visit him when he worked at Ozzy's? Did he try to visit him when he worked for Mammon at first?
Right.
Like, who exactly did he talk to, or is it all of the above?
Yeah.
But the whole, like, they told me you didn't want to see me.
Yeah.
Who's they?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and if it turns out that it is Ozzy, then that's a huge thing. And also, just Ozzy being overprotective generally could be a falling out, and also could be a reason that drew Fizz to him.
Yeah.
So, like, I do think they, like, care about each other and stuff, but it could be one of those situations where he's just like, oh, I'm gonna be with this person. I think I'm really attracted to them and into them because they comfort me, or they remind me of Blitz.
Because he's used to being protected.
Yes, he's used to being protected. This person who's way high above me finds interest in me, and and is super impressed by me and can protect me. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ozzy doesn't even entertain the idea of giving a crystal to Blitz because Fizz doesn't like Blitz, which is really funny.
He's so fucking loyal.
So loyal. He's like, no way. Stolas, we're cool, but you're dating a bitch.
Yeah. Until you stop fucking that motherfucker.
Yeah. Even Ozzy calls Blitz Blitzo, which again, we don't know if it's malicious or not. Like, him and Fizz just might not know before this episode. And then Ozzy gets the message from Fizz, quote unquote, which turns out is Crimson blackmailing him with Fizz. But before he learns that, he sees a message from Fizz and he smiles so big.
Yeah, he immediately just stops focusing on Stolas. He's like, oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, my boyfriend.
Yeah, he's so cute. And then Stolas, you're such a fucking posh nerd, is the note I wrote. He's like, I'm gonna read these little contracts and I'm gonna... But thank God he's there.
Yeah.
And he reads those contracts, especially that first one that's like, it says that he can use Fizz's head as a decoration.
Yeah.
And it's like...
He gave him like a fake contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine he'd sign that. Oh
my god.
But yeah, the Stola's just being like, I love to read.
Yeah.
And that's all our notes for this episode.
That's all we have for this episode. In the next part, we'll get more into... Fizz and Blitz and everything that they're going through.
I cut it here specifically because the next scene is when Blitz does the really epic, like, breaking out of the cage sequence, and then they have their whole emotional breakdown, and I figured we should probably stop before there.
Definitely.
It's a good way to stop.
But I think we can definitely get through the rest of this episode in one more episode.
Yes, I think so.
So next time you hear from us in 2 weeks will be the rest of Oops.
Yep.
So that's exciting.
And now we have our standard ending business. Follow the Instagram, Linktree in that bio, at AA Discussions. The Instagram, not the Linktree. And all of our links are in there. Subscribe to the newsletter, that link's in there. Our Big Cartel site still has stickers, that link's in there. If you want to message us on Instagram with your thoughts or your theories, we've had some messages, not really much in between these last 2 episodes, but we talked about a bit the last episode we posted. We've been having a lot of people message us with their theories, and it's really nice to hear from you all. So we appreciate your messages, and feel free to message us if you'd like.
Yes. We also, with our last episode, we had some delays in getting it up. I'm not sure if people noticed or not, but we were like updating about our issues with the delay on Instagram. So if you want to be kept in the loop about those kinds of things, it's important to follow the Instagram. Yeah,
and also if we go on hiatus, which honestly we might after we get caught up, like probably after Ghostfuckers, because there's a bit of a break, or is there another one?
No, there's
after the end of the season, right?
That's the end of this year.
After the end of this year, though, when they go on their break, we're gonna be caught up.
Yeah, but it's Ghostfuckers, and then there's 2 more after that. Still,
but what I'm saying is, there will inevitably be another hiatus.
Yes.
And so when we're on hiatus, you also will know. We'll post like a little bit beforehand, being like, we're gonna get off hiatus. We're gonna start posting this day. So it's good to know.
Yeah.
Also, comments on Spotify for podcasters aren't working. I'm trying my best to figure it out. I can't. I've talked to Spotify support. I've talked to everyone. I've read all the articles. Cannot figure it out. You cannot leave comments. I also can't do comment-based Q&As. I'm very sad about it. But the polls still work, so all the Q&As until it's fixed will be polls. And you can leave comments on the YouTube versions of each episode, or you can comment on the post about the episode on Instagram, or you can message us on Instagram. So there's still ways to say your thoughts.
Yes. What is our Helluva Q&A for this week?
I don't know. We didn't write one down.
What about, do you think Fizz and Ozzy
will break up?
Yeah.
Or do you think Blitz and Fizz will get together?
Yeah, that one. You'll see what it is.
You'll see what it is. I was trying to avoid deciding it on the air, but then you said it. I was like, we can decide it on the air.
Yeah.
Okay, but you'll see it. Vote. 30 of you, I swear to God, voted on the last one. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep it up. We love to see it.
You can also, now that episodes will also be on YouTube, you can comment on there.
Yes. Yes, that's what I was. Yes. You can comment on there. If for some reason the poll doesn't work for you, also you can just tell us in the comments. Yes. Also, another thing about the polls is when you vote on them, you get to see what everyone else says, which I think is really cool. So you can see if people agree with you or not. So vote on the polls. Yeah. Anything else?
I think that's it.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, fuckers.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay safe.